floor is yours, Rajiv.
So since this question has to do with scholars and Wendy Doniger and academics and so on, uh, I would say that uh, I have engaged the Western academic community for 20, 25 years, full time. And I know a lot about what the dynamics are, what the politics are. And I must say that there is a kind of a cartel mentality which keeps people like me out. And the scholars are not the scholars who are on a personal level, on my wavelength, are not willing to fight the good fight against the whole system and say, like, look, let the voices come and represent themselves, and let us not talk about them behind their back on their behalf like good cops. Let them come and speak for themselves. A part of the problem is, what is the definition of a competent scholar is a very Western definition. So you have to have a Western certification that you are a qualified scholar. You have to go through a Western program of higher education and be certified. And that is not how our yogis and acharyas have been certified for thousands of years. So we have to, in order to have a person be qualified in the Western Academy to represent Hinduism, he has to go through a Western system of what amounts to brainwashing. I know a lot of people who are into the training, and they have to study, the certain categories, hermeneutics. Swami, a sadhu or yogi doesn't know what's meant by hermeneutics. And why is it important to understand, every time we do something from the Hindu point of view, to get a Western publisher, he'll say it has to be peer reviewed by Westerners. The Westerners who peer review reject it because you did not cite Western sources. The moment you cite Western sources, you're back in the game. You're like, you've been co-opted. So either you get co-opted into learning the Western categories, the categories of Western universalism, and then you learn the hermeneutics and you learn to think like them, and then you get your certification, and then you can speak for Hinduism because you have a Hindu name, but you've been brainwashed and compromised. Or if you are really truly a practitioner, then you are not allowed to come enter the discourse in the Western Academy because you are not somebody that they have certified. So this is the gatekeeping and kind of a certification system, which is itself a problem in my opinion. We consider a person who is a very highly accomplished yogi to be our exemplar. Sri Aurobindo would never have been allowed to come and teach in the Western Academy his philosophy. Gandhi would not have been allowed, Swami Vivekananda would not be allowed, Raman Maharshi would not be allowed, because they did not have the Western degrees and the Western stamp of what it constitutes to be an academic scholar. So you see, once I was talking to some people in Princeton University, and I said, suppose you have an opening for a professor in Buddhism, and Buddha walked in. What would you do? And they had no hesitation to say, we will reject him. That's true. And I said, what would you do if Jesus Christ walked in, applied for a job on Christianity? They said, we'd have to reject him. Because the university policy doesn't satisfy that. So I think we have a problem of a particular civilization controlling the universalism idea of who constitutes a scholar, what he has to go through, who certifies, who are the peer reviews that approve the journal articles, so that you have to peer review journal articles so many times before you can get it to the next step. This whole mechanism in the academy is itself something that needs reformation. The issue is not the ethnicity, gender, etc. of an individual, but the way their mind has been programmed with what kind of apps he has to download in order to be that Sikh who teaches Christianity. What kind of teaching does he have to go through? So let me give you a very concrete example. I'm right now fighting a battle on the future of Sanskrit with a man called Sheldon Pollock in Columbia University, who's immensely powerful. And the Shringeri Mutt, which is the hub of all our, the center of Advaita, Vedanta, and so on, a person they would consider initiated and a scholar who's done so many years of tapas and who's attained a lot of enlightenment, including the Shankaracharya himself, would not qualify to occupy that chair of Sanskrit because he doesn't fit the requirement. So what you would have to do is, if the Shringeri Mutt wanted to create their people and occupy chairs of Sanskrit in Columbia University, which they want to fund, they would have to send young people through the whole education system, get them a Western orientation. The person will learn hermeneutics, he will learn all these categories, he will learn whatever, all of that stuff. And that filtering process my two kids went through get their advanced degrees in the humanities. The filtering process is such that no matter how determined you are to not succumb, you will have to succumb to get your degree. And I have a lot of horror stories of Indians and Westerners who are practicing Hindus who have to fight the system in order to get their doctoral dissertation approved. And till the end, they were told, this is too much the practitioner's view, it is the emic view, not the etic view. And this is too much, you haven't cited enough Western sources. And this is based on an experience of a yogi, but we don't consider that. That is not what matters. So you see, what you are doing is completely sidelining the credibility and adhikar of a yogi's experience, because that is not what the Western Academy considers valid and legitimate. You are basically looking at book knowledge. So what you have is the bookworm who can dissect and produce from the text. We are not a text-based, we are an embodied knowing tradition. And since we are embodied knowing, the exemplar is somebody who's embodied. So it's to give you an analogy so you have some sympathy with me, I would say that some of the saints in Christianity and Jesus Christ himself might not have been into hermeneutics, might not have been the guy who would pass the exam and be able to turn in all the papers, and might not be qualified. And so what has happened is the Western academies' teaching of religious studies is not even sincere to Christianity itself, is my view. It is not only a Hindu problem, but the problem that Christianity suffers as a result of it is obviated or relieved or reduced or whatever by the fact that there's a huge number of seminaries that are sympathetic, so they are producing enough discourse. We don't have the Hindu version of seminary that's out there producing a whole lot of output. So if we want to have a seat at the table in academic discourse, we have to go through the regular religious studies route. So actually, I used to be a champion of trying to get positions and chairs in Hinduism studies in the academy. I no longer am, because I think what you're doing is funding the wrong methodology of studying us. It is not the DNA, whether it's an Indian DNA or whether the guy wears a turban or whether he's a Muslim. It is not about that diversity. I'm not talking about diversity of ethnicity. I'm talking about the diversity of the Siddhant, what we call Siddhant, which is what you would call hermeneutics. We have our own equivalent of hermeneutics called Siddhant, the theory of how you see things, the theory of interpretation. We have our own, Sanskrit has its own literary theory, which believes in rasa and all these things which don't even exist in the West. So what we are asked to give up, to even have a voice at the table, is to give up the things that are most central to us, which make us who we are. We have to give that up and assume another aura and another voice and another kind of way of thinking in order to even be having a ticket and a certificate so we can be heard. That to me is a problem that nobody is talking about, because they're saying we'll now have women, we'll have blacks, we have a Sikh guy, we have a guy with this with various kinds of clothes, and we have a Swami wearing, we have a guy in saffron, but this saffron clothed Swami will have gone through so many years of brainwashing that he will not be able to teach the same way. So to me, it's more the methodology of studying religion itself which has to be debated.